Marvel's 2012 film The Avengers, or Avengers Assemble if you're from the UK, is in many ways the MCU's real start point. Prior to this film, the continuity's connecting tissues had very much been on the peripheries of the films. Minor characters would cross over, supplemented perhaps by background gags and details. The Avengers, though, saw the unlikely union of all our favourite heroes as they joined forces in order to save New York City, and indeed the world. But what if I told you that this whole origin story had played out before, and maybe, in parts, this previous version was even better? I mean, there's no point building suspense anymore, you've all seen the title. I am, of course, talking about Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, or EMH. And if you take another look at the way that show puts together its Avengers squad, I think you'll start to see the MCU Avengers in a different light. The show's pilot was a two-parter called The Breakout. The first episode sets things in motion, but we're going to be talking mostly about part 2, the episode in which the Avengers come together. At this point, there's been a worldwide supervillain jailbreak, and most of the heroes individually have been caught up in the chaos. But then the secret fourth supervillain prison, the Raft, is compromised, and the biggest danger of them all is freed: Graviton. At this point, the heroes who will become the Avengers haven't ever really worked together, but some of them have been approached unsuccessfully by S.H.I.E.L.D. to act as agents, and it seems they're vaguely aware of each other's existence. To summarise the plot of Breakout Part 2, it becomes apparent that NYC is the epicenter of all the carnage, as Graviton has emerged from the Hudson Bay and is causing a bit of a ruckus. One by one, each of the future team make their way to the scene, and when it becomes clear that none of them can beat Graviton alone, they work together, and surprise surprise, they get the job done. Now, there's more to it than that, and we'll get to some of it in a bit, but it's not really the plot at large I'm bothered about. It's more a lot of little moments that interest me. Moments which are disarmingly familiar if you've seen the first MCU Avengers film. There's a number of shared story beats. In both, it's an attack on New York City which draws the team together, an attack which we see visibly damaging a lot of the buildings. We have a villain with delusions of godhood, and these delusions are promptly done away with by the Hulk, who's not afraid to mark the occasion with a quip.
Puny god.
I'm the strongest one there is!
You sure about that?
And speaking of the Hulk, he wasn't there with the rest of the team for much of the battle. Indeed, he was miles away in a deserted setting after having escaped a prison. But in both cases, after a brief conversation with a strangely calm local, Banner is responsible for the Hulk rocking up out of nowhere in New York and saving the day. There's even some background tension with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military, who don't seem to trust the team to handle this sort of thing on their own. And beyond this, there's a couple of little moments which aren't much by themselves, but are weirdly similar to other bits from the MCU. We have an oddly similar moment from Thor, who's confused about the presence of certain beasts on Earth.
I did not realize there were ogres on Midgard.
We come here battling like Bildschneid.
Like what?
Bildschneid. You know, huge, scaly, big antlers. You don't have those?
And come on, I don't have to explain this one, do I? I know what some of you are thinking. Well, yeah, there's bound to be similarities. They're essentially telling the same story. It all came from the comics, right? Well, yes and no. Let's see how they both measure up. How did the Avengers start in the comics? Well, in the original continuity, Thor, Iron Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp are trying to stop a rampaging Hulk from going nuts and smashing everything, as he is wont to do from time to time. It turns out that Loki was the one behind this after all, and everyone teams up to sort him out. Everyone likes to bang on about how the MCU Avengers are inspired by the Ultimates more than anything else, and yeah, it's true, but the way the MCU portrays the formation of the Avengers isn't really too similar to the Ultimate Universe. In that continuity, the Avengers as a team are put together and employed by S.H.I.E.L.D., kind of similar to the MCU, but in the films, this partnership is weak and clearly unsustainable. It's only when Loki kills Coulson and threatens New York that the team is truly born. The Ultimates pretty much start off with Iron Man, Captain America, Giant Man and the Wasp. Thor initially refuses to join, and while the team's first mission is similarly in New York, it's not about Loki, it's to stop a classic Hulk rampage. The Chitauri are introduced later on in this comic run, but they don't really have much in common with the aliens in the Avengers past the name, and they don't really even attack New York City. There's some action at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, but other than that, it's mostly in Arizona and Micronesia. So you probably see the point I'm about to make. While elements of the MCU's Avengers origins can be seen in the original continuity, i.e. Loki, and also in the Ultimates with the whole SHIELD angle, a lot is ostensibly original. But it's similar enough to EMH's origin story that I think it's interesting to compare the two. Now, of course, I'm not saying that the MCU writers plagiarized Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I mean, it's definitely possible that one of them caught the EMH pilot back in 2010 and some ideas got stuck in their head, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The thing is, for all the similarities in their origin stories, there is one main thing I think EMH does better than the MCU in regard to the founding of the Avengers. And that's this moment.
Stand down. We've got bigger problems in the home. 74 supervillains are now on the loose all across the country. Maybe the world by now.
Fury's right.
What? You of all people are going to work for SHIELD?
No, he's right about us making a difference. Together. One-on-one, we can each take down a villain or two, but 74. None of us can do it alone. Together, we have a chance. What we did here, it can change things. The world needs us, but not as SHIELD agents. As a team, on our own. Together, we can avenge the wrongs caused by all these villains.
We can be Avengers.
Good name.
Look, the Avengers film is great, I've watched it countless times, but it doesn't really leave off with the team in a position where they can continue being a team. The film ends with Thor taking Loki back to Asgard, and the next thing you know he's going off doing space stuff. From the start of the Winter Soldier, it seems like Cap's right off to DC to do more SHIELD missions, and Black Widow's doing a similar thing. Sure, at the end of the film we see the Avengers hanging out, but there's no continued teamwork after the fact because there's no reason to have any. Having the breakout plot be the cause of the particular villain against whom the Avengers form is brilliant, because it gives the Avengers an incentive to exist as an ongoing team who stay together and grow together for a reason. Not just a group of people who meet once and then do it again a couple of years later. We get bits of this later on in the MCU, like the team hunting down Crossbones at the start of Civil War, but nothing like this is set up in the Avengers, and I really think it should have been. Obviously not the whole mass breakout plot, that never would have worked, but let me know if you agree, and tell me if you can come up with a similar plot thread which could have been worked into the Avengers and left to dangle. I'd also love to hear what you think of the similarities between EMH's pilot and the Avengers. Click the card on screen now to see more Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes content, and if you're interested in this sort of thing, then consider subscribing. We're getting pretty close to the 1,000 subs I need for YouTube partner status, and I could not be more excited. Oh, and PS, if I sounded a bit funny, it's because I've got a cold, so yeah, that's what that was. But yeah, stick around, and I'll see you next time.